Curious, Captain. The similarity in names. Were you told why Merrick was dropped from the Space Academy?
He failed a psychosimulator test.
Star Trek wasn't just a TV show, it was a revolution. In 1966, Gene Roddenberry launched a wagon train to the stars, and what followed changed pop culture forever. Captain Kirk, Mr. Spock, the USS Enterprise, they weren't just characters, they became symbols of exploration, diversity, and possibility. But behind the flashing consoles and alien encounters was a story just as dramatic as anything on screen. Rejected pilots, network meddling, flubbed kisses, and even Lucille Ball herself stepping in to save the show. The road to Star Trek's survival was stranger than science fiction. These are 30 weird facts you didn't know about Star Trek. Fact 30. The rejected pilot. Before Captain Kirk ever set foot on the bridge, Star Trek had another captain, Christopher Pike. The first pilot, The Cage, featured Jeffrey Hunter as Pike and Major Barrett as his icy cool first officer, Number 1. NBC took one look and said no. They thought it was too slow, too intellectual, not enough action for primetime TV. The show was dead before it began, until one powerful supporter brought it back from the brink. And that supporter wasn't a studio boss or a network exec. It was America's favorite redhead. Fact 29. Lucille Ball saved Star Trek. When NBC rejected Star Trek's first pilot, the series should have been scrapped. But Lucille Ball, yes, the queen of comedy, wasn't just cracking jokes on TV. She owned Desilu Studios, the company producing Star Trek. Lucille personally stepped in, pushed NBC to reconsider, and bankrolled a second pilot. Without her, the Enterprise never would have launched, and the franchise might have ended before it began. And when that second pilot rolled out, it came with a brand new captain, one who would define the future of sci-fi television. Fact 28. The arrival of Captain Kirk. With Jeffrey Hunter out as Pike, the studio needed a new lead. Enter William Shatner, who was cast as Captain James T. Kirk in the second pilot, Where No Man Has Gone Before. Kirk's energy, swagger, and punch-first charisma were exactly what NBC wanted. Suddenly, the too cerebral show had a captain who could throw a punch and charm the galaxy, and audiences took notice. But even with Shatner at the helm, NBC wasn't done meddling. In fact, one of the show's boldest moments nearly got erased by the network. Fact 27. The kiss NBC tried to block. In 1968, Star Trek filmed television's first interracial kiss between Captain Kirk and Lieutenant Uhura in Plato's Stepchildren. It was groundbreaking and NBC panicked. Fearing backlash from Southern affiliates, the network demanded two versions, one with the kiss, one without. But William Shatner and Nichelle Nichols deliberately sabotaged the non-kiss takes, crossing their eyes or breaking character so they couldn't be used. The kiss made it to air, and history was made. And while that scene broke barriers, other episodes were so bold that entire countries refused to air them. Fact 26. Episodes banned overseas. Not every audience was ready for Star Trek's daring themes. In the UK, the BBC banned several episodes including The Empath and Whom Gods Destroy. The reasons? Too much torture, too much sexuality, and storylines deemed unfit for primetime. For years, British fans had no idea these episodes even existed. It wasn't until reruns and VHS releases that viewers finally saw the forbidden chapters of the Enterprise. And while some countries tried to silence Star Trek, the show was quietly giving voice to something even bigger, a real-world social revolution. Fact 25. Martin Luther King Jr. convinced Uhura to stay. Nichelle Nichols, who played Uhura, once planned to leave the show after the first season to return to theatre. But at an NAACP fundraiser, she was stopped by none other than Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He told her Star Trek was the only show he allowed his children to watch, and that her role as a black woman on the bridge of the Enterprise was vital. Inspired, Nichols stayed and went on to break barriers for women and minorities in science fiction. And, while Uhura became a symbol of progress, another star behind the scenes was shaping the very DNA of Star Trek. Fact 24. The forgotten co-creator, Gene L. Coon. While Gene Roddenberry gets most of the credit, another Gene L. Coon, was the unsung architect of Star Trek. He introduced the Klingons, fleshed out the Federation, and even coined the phrase Starfleet Command. Kuhn's fingerprints are everywhere, but history largely erased him, leaving fans to rediscover just how much of Trek's foundation was his. And while Kuhn shaped the show's mythos, Roddenberry left his own mark on one of its greatest villains. Fact 23. Khan's strange name. One of Kuhn's boldest legacies was Space Seed, the episode that introduced Khan. But Khan Noonien Singh's name wasn't random. It was partly inspired by Roddenberry's real-life friend Noonien Wang. Roddenberry hoped Wang would see the name on TV and reconnect with him. Instead, it became one of the most iconic villain names in sci-fi. And while Khan would live on in movies decades later, another detail from this very episode nearly broke the show's budget. Fact 22. Space Seed's budget blowout. The episode Space Seed may be a fan favorite, but it was also a nightmare for accountants. The elaborate model of Khan's ship, the Botany Bay, sent the budget soaring, adding more than $12,000 to production costs, a fortune for 60s television. That one episode stretched the show's resources thin, proving just how ambitious Star Trek was willing to be. And while money was tight, tension behind the scenes was even tighter, especially between the show's two biggest stars. Fact 21. Shatner versus Nimoy rivalry. Ambition wasn't the only tension on set. Behind the scenes, William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy clashed constantly. Shatner resented how popular Spock had become, while Nimoy pushed back against Shatner's attempts to dominate the spotlight. Their rivalry created friction on set, but ironically, it fueled the energy between Kirk and Spock, making their chemistry on screen even more electric. And that electricity sometimes sparked in dangerous ways, especially when the crew faced one of their strangest accidents during filming. Fact 20. A wasp attack on set. During the filming of the second pilot, Where No Man Has Gone Before, disaster struck from above. A wasp's nest hidden in the rafters was disturbed, and angry insects swarmed the cast and crew. Production had to stop while people were treated for stings, a bizarre interruption for a show already fighting to survive. And while danger buzzed overhead, the crew was also cobbling together alien worlds from scraps. Fact 19. Borrowed monsters and props. Tight budgets meant Star Trek often scavenged from other productions. Props and costumes from The Outer Limits and other sci-fi shows were repainted, repurposed, or stitched together for new alien worlds. It was a patchwork approach, but it worked, giving the galaxy a strange lived-in feel without breaking the bank. And while props filled the frame, one character's most distinctive feature nearly got cut by executives. Fact 18. Spock's ears almost got him cut. NBC loved the idea of a logical alien, but hated the way he looked. Leonard Nimoy's pointed ears and upswept eyebrows read as satanic to nervous execs who warned the look could offend viewers in the Bible Belt. For a while, Spock's future was on the chopping block. Gene Roddenberry bargained hard. The studio forced him to drop #1 Majel Barrett from the bridge, but he saved Spock ears and all, then brought Barrett back later as Nurse Chapel. The gamble worked, the ears became iconic, and the same budget anxiety that nearly sanded off Spock's edges led to another invention that defined the show, one born purely to save money and time. Fact 17. The transporter was invented to save money. Beaming up wasn't just futuristic, it was frugal. The original plan had been to show the Enterprise landing on planets or shuttles touching down for every mission, but building models and filming landings would have been way too expensive for a weekly TV budget. So the writers came up with the transporter. With a shimmer of light and a sound effect, entire crews could be moved instantly without spending a dime on miniature effects. What began as a budget hack became one of the most iconic sci-fi ideas ever. And that wasn't the only time Star Trek saved money in strange ways. Even the shuttlecraft itself came with a catch. Fact 16. The shuttlecraft came from a toy deal. Fans remember the Galileo shuttlecraft fondly, but it almost didn't exist. Building a full-size shuttle was too expensive for the show's budget, so the producers struck a deal with model kit company AMT. In exchange for the rights to produce and sell Star Trek model kits, AMT built the shuttle for the series at no cost. The partnership gave the show a vital prop and gave fans a toy they could take home. And while the shuttle was a clever business move, the show's most famous catchphrase turned out to be something no one ever actually said. Fact 15. "Beam me up, Scotty" was never said. It's the line everyone knows, but it never happened. Across all 79 episodes of Star Trek the original series, no one ever actually says the words, "Beam me up, Scotty." Instead, Captain Kirk used variations like "Scotty, beam us up" or "beam me up." Over time, fans condensed the phrase into a neat catch-all, and the misquote became more famous than the real lines. And while fans invented that phrase, the writers were busy inventing new alien species, sometimes on the fly. Fact 14. The Klingons were a last-minute creation. The Klingons weren't part of Gene Roddenberry's original vision. They were invented on the fly in Season 1's Errand of Mercy, when the writers needed a new villain after the Romulans proved too costly to keep showing. With dark makeup, bushy eyebrows, and simple costumes, the Klingons were cheap to produce, but they grew into one of the most enduring alien races in science fiction. And while they became icons, another alien design almost cost Leonard Nimoy his job. Fact 13. Nimoy's Spock walkout threat. During the second season, NBC kept pressuring Gene Roddenberry to tone Spock down, especially his ears and his green Vulcan blood. Executives worried the character was too strange for mainstream audiences. Leonard Nimoy finally had enough. He told Roddenberry he would quit if Spock was diluted any further. Roddenberry backed him, and Spock stayed exactly as he was. A gamble that paid off when Spock became the show's breakout star. And while Nimoy fought to keep his character intact, another actor used his voice to secretly play far more characters than fans ever realized. Fact 12. Scotty had many voices. James Doohan wasn't just Chief Engineer Montgomery Scott. He was also dozens of minor aliens and background voices across the series. A skilled voice actor, Doohan slipped in so many extra roles that he became the secret sound of Star Trek. His accents and inflections filled out alien species, radio calls, and even computer systems without viewers ever noticing. And while Doohan's voice helped shape the galaxy, another Hollywood legend shaped the show's very survival behind the scenes. Fact 11. Lucille Ball backed the Enterprise. When Desilu Studios produced Star Trek, it was under the leadership of Lucille Ball. Most people knew her as the Queen of Comedy, but behind the camera, she was a powerhouse studio boss. Lucille personally championed Star Trek when executives doubted it, insisting the studio bankroll the pilots. Without her influence, the Enterprise might never have left dry dock. And while she gave the show life, the network nearly killed it before it even aired. Fact 10. NBC wanted it to be a Western. When NBC agreed to air Star Trek, they didn't want high-concept philosophy, they wanted a space Western. The network pushed Gene Roddenberry to frame it like Wagon Train, with lasers, hoping audiences would accept it as a familiar genre in disguise. Roddenberry played along just enough to sell the show, but once it aired, he filled it with moral dilemmas, allegories, and social commentary. What NBC thought was a simple cowboy adventure became something much deeper. And sometimes, those deeper ideas were so daring that censors flat out refused to let them reach the screen. Fact 9. Episodes the BBC banned. While American audiences got the full run of Star Trek, fans in the UK weren't so lucky. The BBC banned episodes like The Empath, Whom Gods Destroy, and Plato's Stepchildren for being too violent or too disturbing. For years, British viewers never saw them, making those episodes almost like forbidden lore, until home video releases brought them back. And even when episodes made it to air, not everything fans remember about the show actually happened. Fact 8. The myth of the Vulcan nerve pinch. One of Spock's signature moves, the Vulcan nerve pinch, wasn't in the script. Originally, Spock was supposed to knock enemies unconscious with a punch. Leonard Nimoy thought that was out of character for a calm, logical Vulcan. He improvised the famous pinch instead, convincing the crew to act as though it worked. The move became canon, and one of the coolest accidents in sci-fi history. And Nimoy's creativity didn't stop there. He even helped shape the most famous hand gesture in all of Star Trek. Fact 7. The Vulcan salute came from real ritual. The Vulcan hand salute wasn't dreamed up by writers, it came from Leonard Nimoy's own childhood. Growing up in a Jewish community, Nimoy had seen a sacred gesture used by rabbis during blessings. He adapted it for Spock, pairing it with the phrase "live long and prosper." The salute became one of the most recognizable symbols in pop culture, born from a mix of heritage and improvisation. And while that salute became a symbol of peace, life behind the scenes was far less harmonious. Fact 6. Shatner and Nimoy's rivalry. Behind the cameras, William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy often clashed. Shatner bristled at how popular Spock was becoming, while Nimoy grew frustrated with Shatner's attempts to steal the spotlight. The rivalry created real tension on set, but ironically, it added to their chemistry on screen. The push and pull between Kirk and Spock felt authentic, because in many ways, it was. And that authenticity helped fuel a fandom that refused to let the show die, even when the network tried to bury it. Fact 5. Fans saved Star Trek from cancellation. By the end of its second season, Star Trek was on the chopping block. Ratings were soft, and NBC was ready to pull the plug. But something extraordinary happened. The fans fought back. Through a massive letter-writing campaign, Trekkies flooded NBC with pleas to keep the show alive. The pressure worked, and the network renewed Star Trek for a third season, making it one of the first shows in history saved directly by its fandom. And even though fans saved it once, the final season came with its own heartbreak and a reminder that the Enterprise was always fighting uphill. Fact 4. The third season was a disaster. When NBC reluctantly renewed Star Trek for a third season, it slashed the budget and dumped the show in a deadly Friday night slot. Sets looked cheaper, scripts grew thinner, and even the actors felt the strain. Despite fan passion, the show limped through its last episodes and was finally cancelled in 1969. But what looked like the end was really just the beginning. Because Star Trek didn't fade away, it came roaring back stronger than ever. Fact 3. Syndication brought it back to life. After cancellation, Star Trek might have been forgotten, but reruns in syndication gave it a second life. Stations around the country filled afternoon slots with the Enterprise, and suddenly a new wave of fans discovered the show. By the early 1970s, conventions, fan clubs, and cosplay were thriving. A failed series had become a full-blown cultural phenomenon. And just when it seemed unstoppable, Star Trek reached its most unexpected milestone. It made history in space itself. Fact 2. Star Trek went to space for real. In 1976, NASA unveiled its first space shuttle. Its name? Enterprise. That wasn't the agency's idea, it was Trekkies. After thousands of fans petitioned the White House, President Gerald Ford ordered the shuttle be christened after the starship. The cast of Star Trek even attended the rollout ceremony, watching their once-cancelled show honored as a symbol of the future. And yet, the most surprising legacy of all was still to come, because what began as a cancelled TV show grew into one of the biggest franchises in the world. Fact 1. From failure to franchise. When Star Trek ended in 1969, it was dismissed as a ratings flop, but thanks to syndication, conventions, and a passionate fan base, it transformed into something no one at NBC ever imagined, a global franchise. Movies, spin-offs, novels, games, and streaming series all trace their roots back to that scrappy little show from 1966. The Enterprise may have been cancelled, but it never stopped boldly going. And there you have it. If you enjoyed these 30 weird facts you didn't know about Star Trek and you think we deserve a pat on the back, make sure to like this video, share it with fellow Trekkies, and subscribe to Golden Hollywood Archives. Because here, the past doesn't just live on, it boldly goes where no one has gone before.